"Get out," my dad said, his voice sharp over the howl of wind. "If you won't obey, you can walk." We were miles from home. Snow was already swallowing the road behind us. I was 16. I thought he was bluffing. "Hi everyone, my name is Harper." When I didn't move fast enough, he leaned across the passenger seat and shoved the door open. The cold hit like a wall. "Maybe the storm will teach you respect," he added. I stepped out because arguing only made him worse. The door slammed. Headlights disappeared into white. At first, I walked steadily, telling myself it was only a few miles. The snow stung my face. My fingers went numb inside thin gloves. My breath turned shallow. I tried calling him. "No, sir." I tried calling my mom. Voicemail. The wind grew louder than my thoughts. My legs felt heavier with every step. The road blurred. I remember stumbling once, then twice. By the time I saw headlights behind me, I was kneeling in the snow, unable to feel my feet. It was my grandpa's truck. He jumped out before the engine fully stopped. "Harper," he shouted. I tried to answer, but my body didn't listen. I remember his hands more than his face, rough, steady, urgent. He wrapped his coat around me before I even understood I was shaking. I couldn't form words. My jaw wouldn't cooperate. My fingers felt like glass. "Stay with me," Grandpa kept saying, lifting me into the truck. "Stay with me, baby." The heater blasted, but it felt distant, like warmth belonged to someone else. My vision tunneled. Snow clung to my hair, melting against skin I couldn't feel. I heard him calling someone, his voice tight in a way I'd never heard before. 16-year-old female, severe cold exposure, barely responsive. The ER lights were too bright. Hands moved quickly. Questions flew around me. "What's her core temperature?" 48 degrees. "That's hypothermic." Someone cut my jacket open. Someone else inserted something into my arm. I drifted in and out of awareness, catching fragments. "She walked how far?" In this storm, Grandpa's voice cracked. Her father left her. There was a silence in the room after that. Not shock, recognition. When I woke up hours later, there were more people in the room, not just doctors. A woman with a clipboard and a police officer. The room was quieter when I woke again, but the air felt heavier. The woman with the clipboard introduced herself softly. "I'm with Child Protective Services." Her tone wasn't accusing. It was careful. The officer stood near the door, hands folded in front of him. He wasn't looking at me like I'd done something wrong. He was watching the hallway. "Do you remember what happened?" the CPS worker asked gently. My throat burned when I tried to speak. "He told me to get out." "Did he say when he would come back?" I shook my head. Grandpa sat beside the bed, his large hand wrapped around mine like he was 5 again. "I found her halfway down County Road 12, he said, voice steady now, but edged with something sharp, barely conscious. The officer nodded slowly. "Your father has been taken into custody," he told me quietly. The words didn't feel real. "For what?" It whispered. "Child endangerment," he replied. The room went silent again. Not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that follows a line being crossed. CPS explained that I wouldn't be going home that night. Or the next. Grandpa squeezed me hand gently. "You're coming with me," he said. For the first time since the storm started, I felt warm. Grandpa's house smelled like cedar and coffee. He carried my overnight bag inside like it weighed nothing, even though I knew he hadn't slept since finding me. CPS had on the paperwork at the hospital. Temporary guardianship. Emergency placement. Temporary. I sat at his kitchen table wrapped in a blanket while he made soup I couldn't finish. My body still felt foreign, like it had betrayed me by shutting down. "He'll call," Grandpa said quietly. Not defending, not excusing, just stating a fact. He was right. The phone rang that evening. Grandpa looked at the caller ID and didn't answer. The voicemail came through anyway. "This is blown out of proportion." My dad's voice said, irritated rather than remorseful.
"She's dramatic."
I was teaching her responsibility. Responsibility. I stared at the phone like it belonged to someone else's life. The next day, the school counselor called Grandpa. Word had spread fast. A storm, an ambulance, police. CPS scheduled a formal hearing that I had to give a statement. When I sat across from the caseworker again, she asked gently, "Has this happened before?" I hesitated, then nodded, because being left in parking lots, being threatened with abandonment, those hadn't started in a blizzard. They had escalated into one, and now it was documented. The hearing room wasn't large. Fluorescent lights, a long table, a clock that ticked too loudly. I sat beside Grandpa while my dad stood across the room in a pressed shirt, looking more inconvenienced than afraid. "I was disciplining her," he said calmly. "She overreacted." The judge didn't smile. "In sub-zero temperatures?" she asked evenly. "It wasn't supposed to escalate," he replied. "Escalate?" Like weather was the unpredictable factor. CPS presented hospital records. Core temperature dangerously low. Risk of organ failure. Photographs of frostbite forming on my fingertips. Grandpa's jaw tightened as each page turned. When it was my turn to speak, my voice didn't shake. "He's left me before," I said. "Just not that far, not that cold." My dad looked at me like betrayal was the crime. "You're exaggerating," he muttered. I held his gaze. I almost died. The room didn't react dramatically. It didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than emotion. The judge leaned back slowly. "Temporary custody will remain with the grandfather," she ruled. Then she added something that shifted everything: and supervised contact only. My dad's composure cracked for the first time because control had just been legally removed. The first supervised visit happened in a beige room that smelled like disinfectant and folded chairs. A social worker sat at a small desk in the corner, not pretending to be invisible. My dad walked in with tight shoulders and a rehearsed smile. "You look fine," he said immediately, scanning me like proof mattered more than damage. "I am," I replied calmly. He leaned forward. "You didn't have to make this a legal circus," that I didn't answer. The social worker watched quietly, pen poised over paper. "I was trying to raise you strong," he continued. "The world isn't soft." "No," I said evenly. "But parents are supposed to be safe." He flinched at that. "You're twisting this to punish me," he accused. I looked at the clock on the wall, ticking steadily through his narrative. "I told the truth," I said. He exhaled sharply. "You've turned everyone against him." No, he had done that alone. The social worker cleared her throat gently. "We're here to assess progress, not argue." Progress. He sat back, jaw clenched. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. Not because it changed. Because the system was watching and he knew it. Winter faded slowly. The snow melted into muddy patches along Grandpa's driveway, and my body healed faster than the memory did. Frostbite receded. The numbness in my fingers disappeared. The nightmares took longer. CPS completed their investigation. There were prior reports, anonymous calls from neighbors. School absences flagged. Patterns I thought were normal written down in black ink as concerning. I wasn't dramatic. I was documented. The final hearing arrived in nearly spring. My dad looked smaller in court this time. Not physically, structurally. His confidence no longer filled the room. The prosecutor spoke in measured tones about reckless endangerment, about knowingly exposing a minor to life-threatening conditions. My dad's attorney argued discipline gone wrong. The judge didn't interrupt. When the ruling came, it was studied at probation, mandatory parenting classes, court-ordered counseling, and permanent guardianship transferred to my grandfather. Not temporary, permanent. My dad's head dropped slightly, but he didn't look at me. He looked at the floor. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. There was no spectacle, just accountability. Grandpa placed his hand on my shoulder. "You're safe," he said. For the first time, that word didn't feel fragile. It felt real. The day the paperwork finalized, Grandpa took me back to County Road 12, not to relive it, to reclaim it. The snow was gone. The sky was clear. The stretch of asphalt where I had collapsed looked ordinary now, almost harmless. "You didn't have to get out," he said gently. "I want to," I replied. I stepped onto a shoulder of the road and stood there for a moment. Cars passed. Wind brushed against my face, but it wasn't violent. It was just weather. I didn't feel small here anymore. I felt aware. My dad tried calling months later. A supervised voicemail filtered through legal channels. I made mistakes, he said stiffly. I hope one day you understand that I listened once, then I archived it. Understanding wasn't required for survival. Accountability was. I went back to school. Therapy became routine instead of emergency. I stopped flinching at raised voices. I learned the difference between discipline and danger. The storm didn't make me stronger. It revealed who I could rely on and who I couldn't. When I look back now, I don't see a girl abandoned in the snow. I see the moment everything shifted. The moment someone finally intervened. The moment I was chosen.